You're listening to Radio Free Rhinecliff.
Welcome to Studio Property, the cinema podcast for people like you. I'm Doug Wortell.
I'm Devin Irby. And this week we are discussing the life and death of Colonel Blimp, circa 1943. And I'm really excited because I know it's one of your favorites and I'd never seen it before. And
you don't hate it? And you don't hate it?
And I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I even enjoyed it so much, I watched it, and then I watched it again with the commentary.
Oh,
I liked it a lot.
Stuff.
I know stuff. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Well, I have to correct something that happened last week. When we were talking about going into this episode, we announced that we were doing this movie, right?
Yeah.
And then I told a story that I either misremember or was operating on bunk information. And honestly, I think it's somewhere in the middle, right?
Okay.
But the story of Thelma Schoonmaker meeting Michael Powell goes as follows. This is the accurate story. This came out of her mouth. So
got it. Okay.
So she was working on Raging Bull in 1979, right? Starting the edit on it. And she was given the day off because Scorsese had gotten her into all the Powell and Pressburger movies. But now, because we went from a 90-minute cut to the actual, I think, 106 minutes, it was showing at MoMA. So we said, get down to MoMA and see the complete cut. Well, Michael Powell and Emerick Pressburger were there. And Emerick was social. He was all excited. Oh, everybody's here to see my movie. He's all like, ha-cha-cha, and being a funny guy. But Michael Powell was carrying, how she described it, this really heavy weight of sadness about him. And it was because of all of the loss that he felt personally between Roger Livesey was sort of his alter ego when he worked on films with him and in their friendship as well. And he was in love with Deborah Kerr. They had been together for a long time. They were supposed to get married, but just broke up. So that movie means like 90 things to him, right? So she introduced herself. Hi, I'm Thelma Schoonmaker, Martin Scorsese's editor. And I'm a huge fan of the films. And they just hit it off from there in 79. They get married in 84. And he passes away 6 years later. But they were together 10 years in total, but he passed away 6 years after into their marriage. So that's the real story.
Yeah, that needed to be corrected. I'm glad you did that.
I'm so happy you don't hate it.
Right? Me too.
Yeah. You only hate Jesus. That's why you didn't like last week, because you hate Jesus.
I mean, 110%.
Well, after explaining all that, now I got to read all this copy.
Okay. Yes, please.
There was a brief pause when Michael Powell reached the podium after a screening of the reconstituted cut of a film both he and his partner, Emerick Pressburger, long considered to be their best work. That was 40 years ago during the spring of 1985. Both Powell and Pressburger were being honored at the International Film Theater, not only for the movie itself, but for being one of the most important collaboratives in the history of cinema. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp was released on June 10, 1943. It wouldn't even be heard of in America for another 2 years because the British government, mainly its Ministry of Information, under Winston Churchill, didn't take kindly to how British soldiers were portrayed. It was barely a year after the Nazi bombing of London, so speculation on whether Churchill himself was being lampooned was a sensitive issue to say the least. The Prime Minister's staff had already gotten him so worked up over the initial script that the production was denied any cooperation by the British military. They wouldn't be lent uniforms, military vehicles, and were even denied their first choice of lead actor, Laurence Olivier, who was serving at the time. When asked where the uniforms and vehicles used in the film were acquired, both Powell and Pressburger would answer with a sly grin, they were borrowed. I like to think about that pause back in 1985 after Michael Powell saw his masterpiece repaired and appreciated by a new generation of filmmakers and lovers alike. This was, of course, after he leaned in and spoke the very same words our protagonist, Clive Candy, spoke when he was submerged in the Turkish bathwater of time. Quote, "It was 40 years ago." Now 40 years, almost to the day from that moment, I get to ask my cousin Devin, could you play the goddamn theme song?
Yes.
Put that prop gun down, put back the canisters you stole.
watch your mouth or you'll never work in Hollywood again.
So we have a guest this week. Welcome back, Mondo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, you're very welcome, sir. You're wonderful at this. We love Mondo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Happy to have you back.
I don't take compliments well.
No, he doesn't, though. He doesn't, though. He, like, shuts down.
Yeah, my daughter was laughing at me about that the other day because I was just like, they said such nice things, and I was just like, yeah.
That's what happened.
Teased me. She teased me for like half an hour.
And you have to get used to if you're going to be on the show. We are very complimentary of each other and our guests.
Not all of them. But what did you guys think of the film overall? Let's start with Devin.
I loved it. I really loved everything about it. So I thought all the film work was fantastic. The camera work, the way they handled lighting, the costuming was fun. I even thought they did a good job with the old makeup, which you can't always say that in a film of that age. And also, I really liked how they just sort of seemed to lean into the painted sets. Because clearly, films of that era, a lot of it's just going to be fake. So if you can make the fake look beautiful, I think that's impressive. And I thought, that was great. And there were so many just like lovely shots. But also, I really liked the story. I thought the story was brilliant. I liked the flashback. I liked the way it was told. I liked the significance of the content of the story. And the characters. The characters were so interesting to me, too. I liked that your protagonist was a bit of a douche.
You really hit the D. Yeah.
Because he was. Win Candy's kind of he's a windbag.
Well, how gorgeous is British Technicolor in particular?
Oh, so beautiful.
It's the chemical that's in the bath that washes that negative is what gives it that look. That's why their Technicolor looks way different than American Technicolor of that age. So, but yeah, it's a gorgeous film.
I'm sure that chemical causes like mesothelioma or something, but it is beautiful to watch.
How about you, Mondo? What did you think?
I also loved it. I think I have seen this once before, like probably a really long time ago on TV in black and white.
Yes.
There were a couple of scenes like I definitely recognized. I mean, if it didn't say that it was like filmed in Technicolor, like, right there in the beginning, I would have been like, what'd they do? Colorize this? But because the early 40s, I mean, how many color films were there? Wizard of Oz, the only one I can mention off the top of my head.
Right. Like even The Great Dictator, right? Wasn't color.
Nope. That was black and white. They were still, most films were still filming in black and white until like.
Yeah, that was 1940.
Again, I only remembered like a couple of scenes. This must have been a million years ago. I probably wasn't paying attention. It was probably the middle of the night, and it was probably on like Channel 9 in New York or something like that.
Yeah. I remember that that initial run, like in probably. Well, when I saw it was like for the first time, I probably saw part of it in the 80s because I too recognized like moments, but the moments I remembered were in black and white as well.
Yeah, but until I saw those moments, I thought this was completely the first time I had ever seen this. Yeah, no, I loved it. And everything about it. I love the scenery as well for a couple of different reasons. There's like a Scooby-Doo scene. And that was like the first and only thing I could think of watching that one scene. And we can talk about that later if we want. But, the scenery, the score is fantastic and interesting. A lot of it is it's
a lot of
upbeat,
genre hopping.
Yeah,
but it's a lot of genre hopping as well. Like the first piece that begins the film when the motorcycles are going to do that exercise or to plot the exercise. It has jazz in it.
Yeah.
There's also like a lot of marching band stuff.
Yep.
The score was written for the film as opposed to being like just like an overall sweeping thing with a common theme like you find in a lot of stuff today. Everything's got the same theme. This was specifically written, parts were written for certain scenes and it's obvious. But a lot of it is very, very upbeat, jovial stuff. At times I even said, well, that's an interesting choice.
So the score was arranged by Alan Gray and recorded by Charles Williams.
Okay.
And you can actually, if you are a streamer, there's an album available. I know this because I was listening to it today, called The Music from the Films of Powell and Pressburger. So you'll have pieces of The Red Shoes, Black Narcissus, A Matter of Life and Death / Stairway to Heaven. They're all on there. So that's a really good record if you just want to hear some cool movie music.
That sounds nice.
So here's a challenge to you both. And we'll start with Devin. Tell me what it's about.
Okay. So I think it's more about General Win Candy. I think it's about him evaluating his life. And I think it's done through the lens of several things. One, we use that lovely flashback, because basically the majority of the film is a flashback, which helps him come to terms with acknowledging he's an old man in a modern world, which I think at some point everybody deals with.
Shit, I'm dealing with that now.
Me too, man. But, so I think the lens of, even though it is also about Teo, I think really it's how that friendship comes to exist and what it means to each other, because it's not a day-to-day friendship, it's a lifetime friendship.
Mm-hmm.
But also underlying all of it is the fact that it's two men with military careers living through massive active military conflict. I mean, because the film essentially covers 4-5 conflicts, essentially. Mm-hmm. I mean, it covers a lot. And two of
them are world wars.
Right,
yeah.
2 of them are world wars.
Yeah.
So to me, you're following along, somebody is evaluating his life. We're using the lens of the friendship, this very important, significant friendship, and then also this lifetime of military service and how he comes to terms with everything that's ever happened to him and he's done, I suppose. Really.
Mondo, what is this movie about?
For me, the movie's about like change and resistance to it. I mean, everything about this movie is about how things change. As you get older, things change, life changes, the world changes around you. And some people are very resistant to that. And that's not always a bad thing, but it's definitely not a good thing.
Devin and I are nodding like bobbleheads.
Yeah.
We're hard agreeing, but you can't hear that over the show. Yeah.
Change is a really big theme here. Like the world is changing.
Yeah.
And some people don't change with the world. Like I said, not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing to stay so rigid in your worldview. You need to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In this case, in the face of hard ass evil.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely in the face of hard ass evil, but also just the way the world works.
Yeah.
I think things change. And, you gotta get with the times, or life's gonna pass you by. Mm-hmm. What was it Ferris Bueller said? Something along those lines. Life moves at you pretty quick. But I mean,
I don't disagree with that at all, with either assessment of what the film is about, because it's not easy, right? Because you have to explain. It's not easy to explain to someone who isn't used to these sort of films, right? Like, it's not one linear story. It's not just the adaptation to the times. It's not just about friendship. The melancholy in this film is palpable because of the loss that happens as it goes on. But it's also sweet and tender. Mm-hmm. It says a lot about rules and has a lot to say about the sort of ceremony and pomp and circumstance that we build around rules. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Mondo comes close by saying, like, yeah, it has a lot to do with not adapting. I think if you're going to tell someone what it was about, that it's about like 90 things.
Right.
Sure.
It's about a man who falls in love and then sees that woman in every woman.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about a 40-year relationship with time.
It really is.
Is it too early to mention a scene that kind of like
not at all
found really interesting? All right, so near the beginning of the flashback, when he hears that, like, this guy Kaunitz is spreading this anti-British propaganda. He gets the letter from Edith Hunter, and he's just like, "Hey, boss, I would like to go to Germany and confront this guy." And they're just like, absolutely not. It's not the way things are done. Leave it to the diplomatic corps.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, F this, and he goes anyway. So right there, it's like early on, like in his life, he was willing to go against the way things are. And the result of that is that part of the reason why he was just like, maybe I shouldn't go with the flow. I shouldn't change because I did that once and I got dressed down, and that dressing down was like hardly anything.
Right.
But
Yeah.
The one time he stepped out of the rigid military roles and stuff, like, yeah, I mean, kind of. Well, it had consequences.
Yeah, he got scarred up in his mouth, but he also got to fall in love.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But his heart broken.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because even then he didn't break protocol by going back for Edith, right?
Right.
Like,
True.
he just, so where he very well could have, and she more than let him know that he could have.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we get into that, I think it's there's a bit of nuance about the realization of the romance and all that. But before we get there, we probably ought to talk about who these people are.
All right, so roll credits, Devin.
All right. So Roger Livesey. Is it Livesey or is it Livesey?
It's Livesey.
Livesey. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Roger Livesey is Clive Wincandy, who ultimately becomes General Clive Wincandy.
Mm-hmm.
Anton Walbrook is Theo Kretschmer Schuldorf.
Anton Walbrook, we also saw in the original cut of Gaslight,
Yes.
1940.
Yes, we did. Also, something I learned, just a little aside, Anton Walbrook was also in the original Victor and Victoria. So before Julie Andrews and James Garner did Victor Victoria, there was a German version. He's in that. He was the James Garner character. Ooh.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? I was all excited.
That's one of my favorite movies of all time, so I would be really interested to see the original.
Me too.
Yeah.
And then our other big character is Deborah Kerr, and she plays 3 different characters over the course of that 40 years, essentially. So we've got Edith Hunter, who's first, then Barbara Wynn, and then towards the end, Angela, a.k.a. Johnny Cannon.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the other really significant actors in this film, Michael Powell's Golden Cocker Spaniels, Eric and Spangle, are in this movie. Just for one scene. But they're
also in A Matter of Life and Death, I think.
They are. In fact, I think their little bio says this is their second film.
Oh. Do they have their own IMDb page?
I didn't find the IMDb page, but I'm pretty sure it exists if we look it up. The other little tidbits that I think we need to know from a cast and crew standpoint, obviously, this is our first foray into Powell and Pressburger. Mm-hmm. Our cinematography is by Georges Pernal. And as you said earlier, music and scoring by Alan Gray. And Colonel Blimp is a cartoon character. It's a satirical cartoon character that first appeared in 1934 in the Evening Standard, the London Evening Standard, by David Lowe. He was a cartoonist.
From what I understand, it's kind of their Uncle Sam-ish.
It's sort of. It's Uncle Sam if you were making fun of how inflated and ridiculous he is. If Uncle Sam was a bit of a doofus.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
They're kind of making fun of like the British military-industrial complex.
Okay. So when they're like, "Oh, I don't know why Winston Churchill thought we were making fun of him or the British government," it's I kind of think you did. I think you knew.
Basically, because you were,
yeah. But yes. Well, let's get into scenes, and I think we're going to start with Mondo.
All right, so there's a couple scenes I want to talk about briefly. Well, one of them, maybe not so briefly. The first scene I really want to talk about, and this has a lot to do with makeup. All right, so watching this movie, I watched it twice. And the first time I watched it, I was constantly pausing the film because I was like, there is no way in hell this is the same actor. And it absolutely was.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then when I'm looking at the cast, because I'm like, no, let me pull up the cast. I see period Blimp, Spencer Trevor is period Blimp. I still have no idea who that is.
Oh my goodness, me too. I was wondering the same thing. I'm like, who's Period Blimp?
So I'm like, Period Blimp, that must be old Blimp. That must be old Blimp. But no, it's not. It is always Roger Livesey.
Yeah.
Now fully understanding that this is the same actor.
Yeah.
When he goes into, when he's fighting Spuds and they go into the bath, my assumption was that there is a cut there and, just beautifully done. And then Roger Livesey steps out of the pool. All right, first of all, so the makeup, though, absolutely fantastic. I mean,
good. Yeah.
I mean, like with Teo getting older, I mean, that's like, I could do that. Not as well. It was still great the way they aged Teo. But I mean, like when you see them make people older in films today, this was fantastic.
You're absolutely right.
So in my headcanon, it was one long shot, and they designed that makeup to wash off of him. So it's just like, so he goes in the fat suit and the bald wig, and it's just like, it just falls off. And then he just kind of steps out of the pool young and vital. And I was like, I'm sure that's not how it happened. There must have been a cut, but in my headcanon, that was what happened. That just washed away.
That's awesome.
I love that he turned the beginning of a 1943 film into the Daredevil hallway fight.
Right?
Like, it was like, no, it's one shot. It's all one continuous
one shot, man.
shot. Right. It's
awesome.
Birdman. It's one.
Yeah.
Because, we don't really see his face when he goes into the pool with Spuds.
I'm going to put some color on that real quick. So,
Yeah.
like I said, when Thelma meets Michael Powell, they were working on Raging Bull. Well, by then he was already friends with Scorsese. I think he was friends with him during New York, and King of Comedy, right? So they all met at the apartment, which is Martin Scorsese's mom's place, which is where it all goes down. You'd see like Cassavetes and Peter Falk, like, just making sandwiches with Martin Scorsese's mom. Like it was, just probably an amazing place, right? Anyway, Michael Powell is there, and he's like, I understand I'm to meet Bob De Niro. And Bob is, a very unassuming person, and he happened to be sitting right next to Michael Powell. And they're picking his brain and interrogating him, almost like a prisoner. How did you do the makeup? How did this happen? Because they are very interested in this for Raging Bull. Mm-hmm. Because if you remember, De Niro has to put on 60 pounds and play older Jake LaMotta. And he said, well, yeah, there was makeup, and he, and Livesey shaved his head, but it's acting. It's acting. It's really that simple, right? And when you look at that performance escalates. It's not just old, young, right? Mm-hmm. Like when his hairline begins to recede, he starts to put on the Blimp accent, right? Yeah. Like you hear the beginnings of it, right? So like his mannerisms become a little different, and he becomes a little bit like he gets a little bit more of that douchebaggery, right?
Yeah.
Added to his character.
What's all this then?
Yeah. What's all this then? Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Before he, reaches his final form, So go ahead, Mondo. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah. I mean, they age him over the course of 40 years too. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, you'll see like this is him when young, this is old. I mean, they age him like so believably. Mm-hmm. It's great. I want to talk about that scene because of makeup. Another scene that really it just got in my head and stayed there is oh goodness, where the heck were they? It's in my notes. They're somewhere after the duel has been requested, and there's a long shot of like a hallway,
Yeah,
and there are people back and forth. In this door, out that door, and all I could think was Scooby-Doo.
Yes.
And I was just like, this is where it came from. This is like 1941. Nobody has done this before. This is where this came from.
To your point, a lot of cartoons borrowed a lot of things from this period of film, right? Like the hunting heads. Yeah. That's been done in Bugs Bunny. It was taken directly from this film, right? To show the passing of time in a short amount of time, right? You get a lot of Marx Brothers stuff. Right, you get a lot of Charlie Chaplin stuff in the early Bugs things, but a lot of things were taken from this movie. But
one of the scene I really want to talk about the most is the duel itself. Mm-hmm. Candy has insulted the entire German army
by accident.
But with his whole chest.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody in the German army wants to duel him. They have to draw lots. And it's a matter of diplomacy. Like he can't
add a nickel.
He can't back down from the duel.
Yeah,
he's got to do the duel, and he's cool with that. Teo wins the lot there, so he's going to do the duel. And I mean, they even tell him, like, the man's not fond of dueling, but he's a man of honor, and this is where he's at. And I know you're going to want to talk about this, Doug, after I mention it. It's like, so you got there's the rules of the duel. It's a whole long sequence leading up to the duel. And then they get in the ring, just so to speak. You see the first few taps of the sword, not actually like really getting into it. They're like, tapping the sword. I've never dueled. I don't know what that's about, but that's what they're doing. And then we pan away, and we're outside, and it's snowing. And Edith is in the car, and we eventually see an ambulance leave. That's the duel, and that's that. I love that.
Yeah,
it's to see an action sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So the origin of that is Emerick Pressburger found a book on the rules of dueling and found them preposterous and also hilarious, right? So he builds up the tradition, the ceremony of the weight of the swords and where they are in distance to each other, the checking of the duelists to make sure there's no protective bandages under their shirt. Mm-hmm. That is a Danish aristocrat who's playing sort of the referee character in that beautiful uniform.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who says to him, like, are you going to cut your sleeve or roll it up? And he's like, which is better? And he's like, I'm not permitted to say. And he's like, well, I'm going to cut it. And he goes, well, that's definitely better.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a wonderful glance that's exchanged between Livesey and Anton Wilbrook, where Wilbrook is very nervous and very serious about this duel. And Livesey's almost like looking at him like, isn't this absurd what we're doing? Like, it's like, and he's conveying this with a look like, what are we doing? He went, I got to dip my foot in the rosin? What? And then as we built up this whole ceremony, this whole preparation for this big duel, once they start dueling, the shot pulls away up into the rafters and outside. Mm-hmm. And you don't see it. Scorsese takes that verbatim in Raging Bull, and it's the championship fight, because each fight was different in Raging Bull, and they didn't know how they were going to handle the championship fight. You've only been hearing about it since the first moment the movie starts. I got to get my shot. Well, he gets a shot. It's the same structure. He's preparing, with his brother and punching him while he's wearing the padding. They're getting ready. They go out to that amazing stadium shot with the big crowd, and then he gets to the ring and no fight. You don't see the fight. Right. He takes that right from Blimp. So the duel scene is a big one. It's one of the shots the movie's most known for.
Which is unsurprising because it's really beautifully put together.
Yes. Yeah, and for a movie that is about more than war, but it's about a man who's gone through these wars, there is no too little war in the movie whatsoever. Any other film, there would be action sequences, there'd be gunfire as people are hunkered down in a trench or something. Mm-hmm. And instead, all the war is glossed over. And I don't mean glossed over like in a bad way, just like, blah, blah, blah. But the scene with the heads is World War I. Mm-hmm. So it's like with the animal heads. It's like, he's obviously also a big game hunter, like most British Army officers probably were, especially if they had served in Africa and India. And so we keep getting the bang, head, bang. Here's an elephant. Bang. Here's a weasel. Bang.
But
here's a
with
deer.
dates underneath.
Yeah, with the date and the location. Which war was it?
Right.
And then for World War I, we get bang, Hun. Mm-hmm. And there is a German officer's helmet. That was World War I.
You could say the same about the death of both wives. Right?
Yes.
You don't see Edith die and you don't see Barbara die.
No.
So, her name's Barbara, right? The second one?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Candy's wife is Barbara.
Yeah. So you don't see either of those deaths, but you see the repercussions, right? So same thing when the war ends. This is a great little tiny moment. And as many times as I've seen this movie, I only noticed it after it was sort of pointed out in one of the commentaries. Murdoch, he's with the Jeep with Candy when he tells him that the war is over, right? And this is very brief. He's like, that woman, you keep talking about? She must have been unremarkable. And he's like, what do you mean? She was an incredible woman, right? And he was like, well, you see her in everyone. Like, you've seen her like a million times. She must have been common looking, which is interesting because we're privy to 3 Ediths, quote unquote, right? But there had to have been a lot of them. So,
which is such an interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Devin. What do you got?
Well, Edith is who I really kind of want to talk about. So one of my favorite moments is post-duel, them in the hospital. Mm-hmm. So as you say, the duel itself, we don't get to see any of the action, but we see all of the pre-work, which ultimately is that era's diplomacy, right? So it's that era. That's what's happening. It's nope. This is how we have to handle this. This is diplomatically. This is what we need to do. So when we end up in the hospital, poor Edith, essentially they have to explain to her, no, we have to kind of quietly hush up what actually happened. So the story is they were fighting over you. So you can't leave now. You have to hang out. You have to stick around. You can't go anywhere. Which one again is kind of part of that diplomacy, this little cover story. And it seems so absurd and silly, but she just agrees to it. But then it clearly gives us this little montage, because obviously the whole time they're in the hospital, we know it's a lot longer than what we see. And so it's Edith and Clive becoming friends and with their little cover story. And as he's healing, so Clive, who is Wind Candy, he gets a giant slash across his lip and ultimately settles on growing a mustache to cover it up, which I think is brilliant. And then Theo, the German officer, gets a giant slash across his forehead. So they're in the same hospital, this German hospital in Berlin. And ultimately, when they've healed enough, they decide they're going to say hello. So Clive and Edith invite Theo, and the young lady with him, you don't necessarily get the feeling that she's a romantic person, but potentially she could be, but it's like a lady friend.
Yeah, it's a lady friend who's a countess?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically they come together and we have this like lovely beginning. This is where we get to see kind of where the romance between Edith and Clive happens, and also how the friendship between Clive and Theo happen. So what I love first off is Theo can't speak much English and Clive can't speak German, but Edith does. She does speak German, and then the Countess also speaks English. So essentially the ladies are sort of translating for these two guys, and all Theo can say is very much. And so It's like they had a whole practice speech where the Countess is like, he's trying to explain something, and then she kind of paused and he'd go, very much. That whole interaction was just cute as a button. But also, right before all of that plays out, we realize Clive and Edith have this moment where romance could bloom, and Clive is clearly too oblivious to realize that it's there. So then when Theo and the Countess come in, Theo immediately takes to Edith. And so suddenly romance starts to bloom there. And so it's this very lovely little light flirting, and Clive just misses it. So he has this kind of shot at romance, and it just is completely oblivious to it. And so then we kind of pal along, and when we get to the point where everybody's healed enough that they're leaving the hospital, Clive thinks he's going back to London with Edith, and Theo comes in, who clearly has better English now. And that whole conversation I enjoyed because of the whole half English, half German. Because honestly, it sounds like when I try to speak German, like there was a lot of und this, right? There's just like all this back and forth. And they're like, what is that word again? Yeah. And basically, so Theo's trying to be proper again. He thinks Edith is Clive's fiance because clearly that's the story he's been led to believe, but he's fallen in love with Edith and he wants to marry her. And so I love when he's like, we have to duel again. And Clive's like, 2 pages of your English dictionary must have stuck together because that's not right. Right? And he's like, no. And then he's like, I'm in love with Miss Hunter. I'm in love with Edith. And then Clive is just like, the way that whole reaction plays out, because he still hasn't figured out that he is in love with Edith. So he's super
Right.
stoked because he thinks his new best buddy is marrying this great gal. He's like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And he's so wonderful and really supportive. He's like, no, congratulations. And he's really sweet. And
Right? The whole
it's a really cool.
Yeah. And I love that we get to revisit this moment so much later in the film. They're much older men. They're both widowed at this point. And Clive finally gets to say, yeah, I was in love with her. And Teo's like, why didn't you say something? He's like, because I didn't know until after the fact. And I clearly wasn't going to go after her. You guys were already engaged and getting married. I'm not going to go after her because I didn't realize it. I didn't figure it out.
And I like when he hugs Edith to congratulate her. I mean, like, she also loves Candy. I'm sure she loves Teo as well. But I mean, she's got this look. She's really not sure.
Yeah.
And I think she might even be a little upset that, like, maybe she was hoping he would be like, well, hang on a second, buddy. I love her too. Maybe we should, or something. But he's so ecstatic for them. And I feel she's a little hurt and let down. I'm sure she's very happy with Teo. She loves Teo too. She's probably been very confused. And, Candy made it very easy for her.
Exactly.
And it's all done with looks and glances. There's no audible cue as to what they're actually feeling, so you just sort of pick up on their body language. And that's not very common in a lot of films in 1943.
I don't even know how common it is in films today, where, especially because the romance is done so chastely, so innocently, it really is, I'm going to marry this guy, but not in an aggressive way, in a real, I like this guy. I don't think he likes me back, but I like this guy too, and he really likes me, so I think this is going to work.
Right.
And then they're married for 30 years or whatever.
It is really nuanced and smarter than most films can communicate those sort of like triangles. Another film would have turned it into a whole, or would have made it much more obvious, or just one note all the way through.
Or even just a bit salacious. I love that it didn't need to be. There was no need. It was very sweet and it was very innocent and very true.
I love that scene because it is so subtle and sweet. And to your point, like really cute as a button and not at all salacious. Like a lot of different directions, especially now. It'd been like he would have had his like director hands and like, let's be dirty birdies. And action, you know what I mean? So it is really sweet. And it does establish so much, again, with just body language. Michael Powell famously said, don't insult your audience. Never talk down to your audience because they're always ahead of you. And this is a brilliant example of how neither of them talk down to their audience. I'm going to be honest with the audience myself for a second because we were having a technical difficulty here, in which case in the post credits I'll play you the conversation that was going on during the post credits in which Devin came for the Deborah Kerr's patent leather belt like the fashion police, making an 80-year-old arrest.
I was making an 80-year-old arrest. In fairness, though, I wasn't going after Deborah Kerr. I was going after the costume lady because clearly it wasn't Deborah Kerr's pick. Whoever, I don't even know who the costume lady was. Whoever she was,
but you're assuming it was a lady.
Oh, you know what? You're right.
You're such a misogynist. I'm so sick of your sexism.
God,
yeah,
I'm awful. Awful.
Well, the scene I want to talk about, there are two, and I'll be brief about one because I'll show emotion, right? But like when Wilbrook Teo is in the back of the car that Johnny's driving. Now, this is the third woman that Deborah Kerr is playing. And he'd already been told that Candide had been in love with his wife and that his own wife is just sort of a carbon copy of Edith, physically looks like her, so when the light hits Johnny's, her nickname, right? When the light hits Johnny and he realizes why she was hired and that she looks identical to both Edith and Barb, I well up, because his reaction to back, the little smile, the knowing smile, while she's talking about what are the chances that I would be hired? That's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie.
1 in 700, right?
Yeah.
1 in 700.
It is 1 in 700, yeah. But I'm going to play a scene.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked earlier about adapting, which was a big theme in the film, right? But mostly adapting to people who fight dirty, right? In this case, it's the Nazis. And this is Teo, after decades of friendship, being really honest with his friend.
Clive, if you let yourself be defeated by them just because you are too fair to hit back the same way they hit at you, there won't be any methods but Nazi methods. If you preach the rules of the game while they use every foul and filthy trick against you, they laugh at you. They think you're weak, decadent. I thought so myself in 1919.
I heard all that in the last war. They fought foul then, and who won it?
I don't think you won it. We lost it. But you lost something too. You forgot to learn the moral. Because victory was yours, you failed to learn your lesson 20 years ago. And now you have to pay the school fees again. Some of you will learn quicker than the others. Some will never learn it. Because you've been educated to be a gentleman and a sportsman.
There's a whole ass political party in America that needs to listen to that speech.
Yes.
Because that is some spot on truth telling right about there.
Yeah, it is.
Candy is so attached to the old way of things that he's not even seeing the present. And it takes a German man to tell him, you didn't win the last war. We lost it. And that's why we came back.
Right. And that's covered like earlier too. When he first goes to see him at the POW camp, which is a very nice POW camp. It's, as far as like, I mean, it's like, that's the way, because that's the way things were done. You took care of these officers. So they had concerts and everyone's sitting on the grass listening to an orchestra play. And when he first goes up to Teo like completely like snubs him. Because for Candy, This is just like, there's no hard feelings. This is war. And we're still friends. No hard feelings, buddy. And Teo obviously has some hard feelings.
Yeah.
And then he comes around a little bit. They have dinner. But on the train back, I mean, he's telling his other German officers, he's just like, these guys are morons. He doesn't say it like that. But he's just like,
But that's what he's saying.
They think that this is the way things are going to be. When we get back, like they are now lulled into just thinking like, that's it. War's over. Everything's cool. He's just like, he's predicting like the rise of the next German power. And unfortunately for him, it is not what he was probably hoping it would be.
Well, his sons fall victim to it. Like his sons become Nazis and he loses touch with them after Edith passes.
No, I think he loses. Remember, I think he loses touch before she passes away, because when she passes away, they don't show up for her funeral.
Right. You're right. Yeah.
Which again feels very relevant. Not showing up to your mother's funeral because you disagree about politics.
I mean, you ever have so many things you want to say that it forms almost like an ice cream headache behind your third eye?
Yes.
Yeah. Family members who are listening to this, I'm talking to you. You know I'm talking to you. Also, yourself. But yeah, so.
Oh my.
Ditto.
So the movie has a really beautiful ending because it goes back to the beginning, right? Where we first come to the exercise that led that home, what is it? The home defense? The home defense.
Mm-hmm. And we get to see the opposite viewpoint of the exercise.
Yeah. And that viewpoint is that the rules were the war starts at midnight. Well, there's no rules in war. So we can kidnap you now. We can capture you now. And that's the way war goes, buddy. And that's a hard lesson for Candy to learn.
The line we hear from Spuds in both of these bookends of the, both points of view of like the war starting at midnight and starting early. The first time in the beginning, I wrote it down because I thought it was kind of like, not a funny line, but a funny line. Brute force and ruddy ignorance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is what he says. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then after watching this movie, when he repeats the line, when we see him say it again at the end, that hit me so much differently, because that is not the way they would have done stuff in the past. And I didn't really think of it. I thought it was like a funny line. Brute force and ruddy ignorance. Woo! And then at the end, I'm just like, brute force and ruddy ignorance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not something Candy approves of.
No.
Because there are rules.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's the sort of wearing of the rules, isn't it? Like, like you're putting on one of Devin's husband's sweaters. Like,
They're good
those
sweaters.
rules fit him in a way that isn't exactly appropriate for 9-10 p.m. But at 3 p.m, Rico Suave. Yeah.
Oh.
So what I love about that ending is his home was destroyed, right? And Murdoch, who becomes his butler, passes away in that shelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the repaired home there's flooding all around it, right? And there's a conversation that he apparently had with his wife, Barbara, who said to him, don't ever change, even when the floods come. Now the floods are there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I didn't change. And he smiles and he salutes the present. He salutes what happened to him. And it's a very optimistic salute at the end.
Yeah.
No matter all the things he's lost, all the things that he was forced to evolve in during the passing of time, he salutes and smiles at the end. And that's a salute that stays with you long after the movie's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah. But has he changed maybe a little somewhere? No, honestly, when he did the whole duel and gets back to London and gets dressed down, again, hardly a dressing down. My daughter talks meaner to me, like on a daily basis. But he's invited to dinner. After he's dressed down, he's invited to dinner. He doesn't go. And he does talk about, before the final scene, he talks about how he doesn't want Spuds to get in trouble, despite the fact that he should be brought up before the board and, there should be some trouble had. He doesn't want Spuds to get in trouble. And he would like to invite Spuds to dinner, wants him to not miss the opportunity like he did. And he kind of lets Johnny know, kind of make sure your boyfriend shows up for dinner.
Right.
So it's while he hasn't changed, I mean, maybe even though he's not going to change, maybe there's a bit of understanding somewhere, maybe. During
the first word, when the scene with the prisoners, right? He's deluded himself into believing that they were fighting fair this time around, and they clearly weren't.
That's another scene in the avoidance of, gratuitous violence. Like, we don't see what really happens in the wars. He's just like, tell me what you know, man. And they're just like, I don't know nothing. And then he's got a split. And then the other guy is just like, well, you're going to deal with me now. And later we get the information that they gave up. So the torture and brutality is only implied, right? It happens. But in the film, it's just, hey, we see the guy as kind of like, he's not on the up and up. The guy who's about to question him after Candy leaves. And he got the information.
Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't think he was a nicer guy than Candy. I'm sure they didn't just, yeah. I mean, there was.
And he even doubts, if you remember, he doubted that information and it turned out to be true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were made to be as oblivious about the torture as he was.
Right.
Right.
They sort of rush him away too. Like he's this old fossil.
Yeah.
Get out of here, buddy. But we were talking about a composition earlier. When he gets to the monastery, when he meets Barbara, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a beautiful piece of camera work there when all the nurses are going upstairs and he's trying to find out who that woman was that looked like Edith.
Mm-hmm.
And they're behind him on that staircase, all going up that staircase that is one of the most beautiful pieces of filmmaking I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just needed to bring attention to that.
Well,
and interestingly, he does never find out who she is. So he stages a benefit to find out who she is, once he's back in England.
Yeah.
It's like he never found out. And it's like he kind of admits that. It's just and everybody seems like partially horrified in that British way. It's just like he had an ulterior motive. It still did a lot of good.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the main reason he did it, was so that he could find out who Barbara was.
He Bob Geldof his way
He did.
into finding his wife. He's like, I'm going to throw a big old festival because I know she's from this town. She should show up. You know?
Well, also the fact that Barbara's not offended by that at all. She's like, it's adorable.
Right.
This guy who's like a
It
dozen
kinda
years
is.
my senior thought I was so cute. He had to figure out who I was. She's not offended
Look.
at all or creeped out.
We come from a generation where a guy in a trench coat can hold a radio over his head under her window and play a lackluster Peter Gabriel song. And this was romance, not stalking. Romance.
Gen Z is going to see that a little differently.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, I know we're getting to the end of our discussion, but can I just say this film also had one of the best lines I've ever heard in a movie ever, which was...
Is it from The Ant?
Yes! Yes!
I knew the line.
You
Yep.
know what I'm talking about.
I wasn't going to forget this time because we there was a line in Amelie that none of us mentioned, and I was like, damn, how do we not mention it? But yeah, this was... Go ahead. It's in the show notes of that episode, guys.
Oh my
but yeah,
God.
go ahead.
Okay, so yes, when Clive goes to the opera with Edith's sister, hoping that the sister Martha will be a lot like Edith, and she isn't, but he runs into two friends and finds out they've gotten married. So he's telling the aunt afterwards. He goes home and he's like, "Oh yeah, they got married," and the aunt says, "Oh yeah, it's a very suitable match. He has money and she has land, and neither of them has any brains." And she just
It's
says
so
it
good.
so quickly and passing.
good.
And he's kind of like, "Uh-huh," and then on they roll.
Yep.
And,
It's that British way.
right? And I was like,
Yep.
"Oh, that lady didn't have enough scenes in this film."
No. We could have used a whole spin-off with just her.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But you know what? Let's move on to America's favorite segment. And by that I mean, let's franchise this, comma, baby. If you are just tuning in, this is the part of the show where we repurpose the content we were just discussing for the purposes of art, darling, but also money, cash, money, hoes. So we're going to decide whether we're going to make a remake or a sequel. How do we make money, assuming we have bought this studio property or acquired it by some means? My idea this week is that we make a movie about the making of this movie, because it parallels not only the film itself, but the Powell and Pressburger story is in this film. Emerick Pressburger had to go to police check-ins because even though he made English propaganda films to further the war effort, he was considered an alien enemy. He had that speech that he made, beautiful monologue that Anton has in the film, where he talks about coming back to his wife's country. That's a beautiful scene in itself. But that's the Emerick Pressburger story, is right there in that monologue. If we made a film that was perhaps like directed by the Coen brothers, because I thought this through, and it had the tone of this film, the sort of the pacing of this film, and it maybe is the story of the British government trying to shut them down just by reading the script, and then working up Winston Churchill, who didn't have a lot of information to act on, but he acted on it anyway, because he did end up preventing the exportation of the film for a couple of years. So as they're trying to get this movie made, you have the enemies would be the British military. You would have his romance with Deborah Kerr, an eventual breakup. But also you can fictionalize some of it, like Roger Livesey, right? Like maybe is the one who gets them the uniforms and the vehicles because he worked in munitions. So maybe he still had the keys to a warehouse or something or other. So, by the way, the title for my movie is War Starts at Midnight.
Oh, perfect.
Directed by the Coen
Nice.
brothers.
Nice.
You know, it's something like Till the Floods Come didn't have the same, jazz hands about it.
No, War Starts at Midnight is definitely jazz hands.
So who do we cast as Winston Churchill?
Okay. This is
Because that's probably one none of us have thought of.
No.
You know.
Well, and it's tough because he's been portrayed so many times. So do we just go with somebody who's already done it?
Like Gary Oldman?
Yeah. Do we just kind of do this simple sort of, listen, can you do a
It's
slightly...
canon. It's canon.
It's canon. Yeah. You're Churchill now. But also, can you do a slightly less serious version and almost a ever so slightly comedic version? Because I feel like this version of the story, he's got to be a blowhard.
This is who I was going to cast as actually Candy in my musical.
Oh, you were going to make a musical. Yeah, nice.
But my instead of Candy for this Coen Brothers film, as Winston Churchill, Matt Berry.
Oh, he would be good.
I love Matt Berry so much.
He is fantastic.
New York City. Love Matt Berry.
Okay. Yeah. No argument, man. No argument at all.
Yeah. Matt Berry would be perfect. Yeah. I like that way better.
That's good. Yeah, that's way good.
Which movie, Devin, do you remember what movie we turned into a musical? It was absurd, too. I don't
House
remember
of Yes.
House of Yes.
Yeah, we turned
the
House of
musical.
Yes into a musical. Yeah.
Right. Oh, man, that Matt Berry is perfect. Let's see. For...
Yeah.
Man, now I want that. I want this so much more than I did now. like I kind of like, oh, this will be a good idea. Now I want to see this made.
Yep.
So bad. All right. So the War Starts at Midnight. I have Christian Bale as Michael Powell.
Oh, okay. I buy that.
Yeah. Because he transformed himself in that American Gangster. Not American Gangster. What was it? American Hustle. The one where Amy Adams had all the great outfits.
Yes, American Hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he like transformed his body there. Like he can become older. Be really great to make him look almost like Livesey did in Blimp. But Michael Powell isn't a heavy set guy, but it'd
That
be
would
really
be pretty
fun
good, though.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got Pedro Pascal as Anton Wilbrook.
Yes.
Oh, I like
You
that.
good with that?
Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
All right.
Okay.
This next choice is going to be controversial. But you got to remember, I got to sell this movie.
Okay.
Right? All right. I can't even want to look at you guys. What is it? Deborah Kerr,
Mm-hmm.
Ariana Grande.
Oh,
Dude, in my musical.
really?
Really?
Yes.
And is it because she codes white girl? Is that why?
Oh,
I'm nodding yes.
I disagree so hard, you two. Or to quote Teo, I disagree very much. Very, very much.
Oh, I love it. That's all I have so far.
All right. Well, okay, so obviously I picked my people based on if we were going to like remake the film, but I still think my Roger Livesey works.
Who is it?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he can give you that sort of like a little bit of a blowhard, but if he's like when he's doing like the acting, like the Blimp acting portions, but then could actually be like a regular old British
that's
dude
great.
for the rest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's great. I think that would be really good. Who did you have, Mondo?
Matt Berry in the musical.
Oh, he was
Like,
going to buy.
for your film. I think he's going to be great as Churchill.
Okay.
Right.
For my musical, Matt Berry,
right.
who doesn't have to talk like this.
Right. But
I've
he,
been watching
he
this
makes
old
albums.
series he was in. Right. Yeah.
He makes
I was
albums.
watching this old series he was in. He's still ridiculous in this series, but
In the IT crowd?
No, because he's ridiculous in the IT.
He's
crowd.
beyond
Yeah.
ridiculous in that.
Mighty Boosh?
Father!
Mighty
Neighbors hate
Boosh?
No. Oh, it was like a soap opera in a hospital kind of thing.
Oh.
And like the main character is like, he's like a Dr. Everyman who takes himself like way too seriously. Richard Ayoade is also in it.
Oh, wow.
And I had never seen it before, and it popped up on something, and I was just like, so I started watching it. It's really bizarre.
You got to find out the title and text it to me. I definitely want to see it.
Yeah, this sounds
definitely.
interesting.
But man, I want this so bad now. I want this movie so bad.
Yes.
I think this is great.
Richard Ayoade as Teo in the musical.
Oh,
okay.
I would have bought that.
I wouldn't want him outside of the musical. I want him in the musical.
Okay.
And again,
Right.
Ariana Grande because musical.
Yep.
That's all I really had for casting as well. A lot of these people, I was quite often mistaking one for the other. Like, your major characters, yes. Your big secondary characters, yeah. Murdoch, I know who Murdoch is. Other guys are just like, oh wait, that's the guy from before, and I'm like, oh no, this is like some new guy.
Yeah.
Because they're all just so very British. Period. They're all so very period British.
Well, can we nick Richard Ayoade for Murdoch?
Oh, that might be good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to tell you, even though I'm wholly opposed to Ariana Grande, I just got to be clear about that. I don't think my Deborah Kerr selection works because what I did was my thought process was if we were remaking the movie of Colonel Blimp, we just need 3 actresses who look similar. It shouldn't be the same lady over and over because the point is that I don't know. I was like, that just doesn't feel necessary. So I was going to do a whole Christina Hendricks, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Jessica Chastain to play the 3 different ladies because they look similar, but like it could like enough to be like, oh, it's. I don't know, because I felt like it's too on the money to try to do the same actress today. But of course, now in your film, we have to use one actress. I don't know. You said Amy Adams before. I feel like we should go with somebody like Amy Adams. I think she'd be. I don't know.
How do I say maybe too old for the part?
Oh, okay. How old is Deborah Kerr when this movie is made?
Getting jumped in the parking lot.
That's fair.
What's that?
How old is Deborah Kerr when this movie is made?
20.
Okay.
That's why I went Ariana Grande because, honestly, because she'll sell the movie.
Is there a 20-something British actress that we feel like would sell?
Could make the soundtrack on the cheap.
Well, do we? But is this? Movie-
Do I need a single? Do I need a single to move this month? Yes, I do.
You do?
Cash Money Hose. Yeah.
Is Millie Bobby Brown doing music yet?
Maybe.
I'm just picturing. Wow, I can't wait for that Millie Bobby Brown record to drop. I don't know. She would be good.
Time out. Hold on.
Yeah.
If we go that route, we have not cast our dumb private colonel, whoever he is, Spud Wilson. Maybe we pick a musician for Spud Wilson, and he does. The soundtracks and provides Cash Money Hose. Yeah, and then we can do something like Millie Bobby Brown, which probably works.
Yeah.
I don't know that I like. I don't know that I love her more than Ariana Grande, but
all the lessons that we learned about foundation garments in the commentary of the film, I feel like we can change Ariana Grande's shape as the film goes on. And she'd be playing opposite whoever it is has to play opposite Christian Bale in the real life romance.
Okay. Can we go more like Sophie Turner?
Yeah, I'll give you Sophie Turner. Yeah.
Right.
That's the redhead, right? From Game of Thrones?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Nobody say Dark Phoenix. That didn't happen.
No, it did not happen.
Right. No. But
I feel like I was going to say Sophie Turner via my To Live and Let Die remake, but I still feel like it works.
Yeah, Sophie Turner.
Why are you remaking Live and Let Die?
Oh, sorry. No. To Live and Die in LA. To Live and Die in LA. That's what I meant. My remake of To Live and Die in LA from however many episodes ago.
When you were young.
Sorry. Thank you for correcting me, because I would hate if that had gone out and everybody was like, Why is she remaking to Live and Let Die? No, To Live and Die in L.A. is what I meant.
That's what she meant. You know you did. You know you did. You know you did.
Live and let die.
Oh my god, this is horrible.
Axl Rose.
Yep.
Okay.
The other white meat.
Oh, my God. Oh, this is terrible. Okay, so I'm gonna ignore all of that shenanigans, and you guys need to come up with somebody for Spud Wilson. We need a singer. We need a pop star, a British pop star to be Spud Wilson.
British. I don't know much about British pop stars. I really don't.
Me either. I mean, there's that Harry kid.
I think we've already cast.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't we cast him in something already?
Everybody's cast him in something.
Well, I mean that's fair.
Yeah.
Hold on. I feel like
he's never going to get around to making that superhero thing.
No, he's not.
He's not going to do that.
I believe Cody cast him in The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Good
not that we
call.
can't use him twice. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Let's cast him. Let's get that Harry kid.
All right, let's get Harry Styles.
The one from the War picture.
There we go.
Yeah. To play a minor character. I don't know. His manager ain't going to go for that.
Well,
that's a lot of money. Now you just blew up our budget.
No.
Yeah.
He'll go for it because he'll get extra money because he's doing the soundtrack. He's going to. Oh, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So he can do the music. And then also, let's be honest, anybody would happy to be Spud Wilson because that character, although small, is ridiculous. And remember, you bookend the movie and you get to come at it from two very different places.
Right. Yes. That's
Which
true.
does make
he's
it
in
pretty.
the beginning and he's in the end.
Yeah.
That is a significant role. Yeah.
It's pretty fun. Because I think somehow, okay, I know I'm really diving in. I know it's your movie, but I'm diving in. Even though it's about.
Well, it's our movie, right? So we got to troubleshoot it.
Okay, this is true. Even though this movie is about the making of the movie, I think we could still start and end the movie with those two scenes. I think it has potential to be kind of fun, right? Delightful. And besides, we also have to have Mondo's version of now
Winston Churchill?
Benedict Cumberbatch going into the water in the old makeup and coming out current Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah. Okay.
So it melts away. He pops out of the Turkish bath and he's himself now.
Like he's like Alka-Seltzer Cumberbatch.
Oh yeah.
It just comes out.
Okay, this is happening now. No changes to that.
No. And also, like, I'm seeing it a little clearer now with the Harry Styles thing, because it would be like first of all, if the Coen brothers, they're already like in the process of reuniting on a project, but let's say that falls through. If we got this to be the film they reunited on, oh yeah, that sells the film by itself. And who wouldn't want to be a part of that?
No. I mean, like, I can't think of anybody who would say no. In fact, I'm pretty sure Ariana Grande is going to be upset when she finds out you both wanted her, and I went double thumbs down.
Yeah, that's right. And she's going to spend her whole career seeking revenge.
She is. Yep. She'll be like, God.
Her name is Devin Irby.
Devin Irby ruined my career.
She's going to lick all your donuts.
Oh, my.
Yep.
All right. So hold on.
That sounds like a euphemism.
It does sound like a euphemism, which is why.
Yeah,
it should be now.
Yeah, it is. She's gonna lick your donuts.
Do you have a cinematographer? Because
I don't. Who shot Llewyn Davis?
Hold on. I know the answer to that. Let me check my old notes, please.
That's Bruno Debenall. Oh, Doy.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who shot Amelie.
Yep. Okay. I mean,
Bruno. Let's get Bruno.
All right. I like it. Bruno it is.
Yeah.
Bruno. Oh, also Harry Styles clearly can't handle the scoring, so who's going to be able to work with him to score it?
Ariana Grande. She ain't busy. Now that you sidelined her.
All right, so I feel like this is our first like blockbuster.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Because
this is probably my favorite of the films we put together. Although House of Yes the musical is
House of Yes the musical is gonna be popular. But this is like our first blockbuster because this is a big deal. It's the making of a movie. We're going to use the beginning and end of the movie from the original movie to like bookend our making of.
And if it does what it's supposed to, then everyone seeing it will become interested in the actual movie.
Exactly.
And we don't get killed by a mob of film students.
Correct.
But yeah, so I think that's our film. And I love it. And I love this movie. I love that you both loved it.
It was great.
Yeah, it was very good. I can't wait to watch the commentary.
It's great. And you have the Criterion channel, right, Mondo? So there is also Thelma talking about color timing the film and talking about her marriage to Michael Powell.
Oh, nice.
But I'm actually going to include a YouTube video in the show notes of this episode of Thelma talking about the career of Powell and Pressburger that everyone should see. And then I hope that if you've never seen the film and you got this far into this episode, which sure, thanks. But I hope you become interested in the film and actually see it yourself because it is one of the greatest films ever made. Agreed. Well, that is our episode this week. What are we doing next week, Dev?
Oh, next week we are doing Polish film Ida. In honor of Kazimierz Pulaski Day. So for any of you non-Midwesterners, Chicago, Illinois has the largest population of Polish individuals outside of Poland itself. And when I was a child, we got Kazimierz Pulaski Day off from school.
That's amazing. Yeah. I just learned that just now with the rest of the audience.
Yeah. So we decided to do a Polish film to celebrate Kazimierz Pulaski Day.
So we're going to see Ida next week.
Ida.
I'm very excited about that. Mm-hmm. Who stars in this film? Do we know?
Ida from 2013 stars Agata Kuleca and Agata Trubukowska.
Her name is my name too.
Yep. My apologies.
Wow. Looking forward to meeting those people.
Yep.
You know, like sometimes, I don't want to name names, Frank, will say to me, you know, you guys sometimes cover movies I never heard of and I don't care about. And then, you know, and I tend to pick some of the more obscure ones, but Devin, you win. You win. So, very excited about Ida. That's going to be really cool. I look forward to those comments also. But that'll be an extraordinary episode no matter what we cover because my cousin and I got it going on dance. Now make a beat. So I think we are your studio property. My name is Doug Wortell.
I am Devin Irby.
And I was Mondo.
And scene.
Studio Property is a production of Spillway Street Content in Red Hook, New York, and syndicated on Radio Free Rhinecliff. Theme song by The Corner Bodega. Visit StudioPropertyShow.com to get all up in our beeswax. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, since we're in a little break here, can I just say one of the only things I hated about the whole movie in that scene, when Edith is going to go back to London with Clive, she's wearing like a freaking patent leather belt. It looks like a plastic patent leather belt. And I'm like, girl, it's like 1902. Who thought this belt was acceptable? The rest of the outfit is on point and gorgeous. And she's gorgeous. And every hat she wears, every outfit's perfect. That belt freaking killed me.
Yeah, you know, I think I was drawn to that belt, but I was just like, belt. I mean, I didn't really think beyond that. I was just like, belt.
Oh, yeah, no, I couldn't handle it. Because I was just like, don't get me wrong. I love, the outfit was perfect, and she needed the tight belt to, set off the top and whatnot. But I was like, who did that? That fabric is inexcusable for 1902 or whatever year we start.
So just give me a couple minutes. But I love listening to you come for this lady's accessories. You're like, yeah, 80 years ago.
Right?
What the were you thinking?
I know.
And that hat, girl.